Hey YouTube, this is Zach with Achilles Financial, and today I want to talk about inflation because that's been the hot topic, and it's something that I've been covering on the channel for 9 months now, and it's great to see that other people are finally catching up because this has been going on ever since we started talking about bonds earlier this year. But as soon as the Federal Reserve started printing more money to meet the quantitative easing approach that we saw last year, today I want to actually propose a counterpoint to what if we don't think that inflation is going to be bad as it necessarily is coming across right now. What I have up here on the screen is the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, the CPI. This is what was announced today for the month of April, and it's what we're going to continue to evaluate and to utilize. As you can see, we've actually seen a sharp uptick here from what we did a year prior. But again, CPI is going to constantly go up. This is not new. The fact that is new and is exciting is the fact that CPI is going up higher and faster than it has in years previously. One of the things I want to highlight of what is included in here is things like food, clothing, shelter, fuels. So one of the things that in here is going up rapidly right now with the Colonial Pipeline is fuels, but also something we've seen over the past year is food going up as well. We're also looking at things such as housing and shelter cost. So let's talk about some of those items. And today I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate because we've talked about this historically on the inflation is going to eat everything away. But today I want to propose a counterpoint. So let's talk about a few of the items right here. The first and foremost that I want to talk about is fuels. So if you look at just some of the items that we can utilize here, which for example, I've been using the FRED database, is going to be the supply of oil. So what I actually want to do is type out oil supply here. And we've got prices. So we'll look at I personally like the WTI. So what I want to highlight is this is oil prices over time, and this is on a per barrel basis. And right now, we actually had yesterday, Kathy Wood came out and said she doesn't expect this metric right here to ever hit $70 again. Frankly, I disagree. I'm very bullish on oil, especially in the short term. But what we're talking about right here is the fact that right now we expect oil, which is included in Consumer Price Index, to continuously go up. Now, right now, I think that there's a lot of near-term catalysts to cause that to go up. However, if we look at how this is priced, it is largely built on supply as well as the cost to pull oil out of the ground. Some of the things that have become increasingly less expensive to do over time is fracking technology. So this is one item where I don't anticipate that we are going to see $133 and at some cases $144 a barrel of oil, because oil should continue to get less and less expensive to create. This is something that we're going to be looking at going forward is oil and is the process to get oil going to become more or less expensive? Well, technology dictates that it's going to increasingly become less expensive to pull it out of the ground. So as that becomes less expensive, then we are going to continue to see more and more supply, which means that we're going to be able to utilize this more often. The other item I would highlight based on this pricing right here is that largely the United States in particular right now is dependent on oil from the Middle East and from countries such as Venezuela, although we're not really necessarily getting a lot of it from them right now. What is going to change going forward is as demand increases from India, from China, and Asia in general, I anticipate that the United States will continue to produce more, which will drive that price down. Keep in mind, most pricing from oil is basically coming directly from the OPEC group, which is essentially a cartel. So let's go back to CPI. So this is what we're talking about. We just covered one of the important things here with fuels. So the next thing I want to talk about here is shelter, or essentially where are you living? So right now we have seen a crazy increase in HPI. And again, this is something we've talked about again. There's a lot of news on the housing bubble. So right now I want to highlight that we're at the highest average home prices in the United States in the history of this data being tracked. So let me propose a counterpoint to the inflation argument. And this is something that when I first thought about it, it kind of blew my mind. But I want to talk about the overall population in the United States trying to look for the boomer level population. So one of the things that I want to talk about when we're looking at this is the overall population. So let's look at the employment population ratio for people 25 to 54 years old. And you can see that the bulk of people in this age range are actively working. However, I also want to talk about the fact that we have a huge portion of our population that is aging. So this is the population ages 65 and above for the United States. So this is oftentimes referred to as quote unquote boomers, or again, we're looking at generations that are older than Gen X. You can see that this is continuing to climb as a percentage of the total population last tracked in 2019. At this point in time, this is the oldest and most wealthy population group in the United States. So there's a lot of money, there is a lot of land, there is a lot of housing that is currently owned by this population group. Now, over the course of the next 20 to 30 years, frankly speaking, this population is going to die off, which means there is going to be a huge surplus in supply and a huge decrease in demand, because right now this is the population group that is downsizing. This is the population group that is not going out and buying their first home. So as this population group continues to age out, frankly speaking, birthing rates in the United States have dropped dramatically, as well as the fact that immigration has dropped dramatically over the course of the past 2 years as a percentage of new population. This means that we are continuing to build to meet this rapid demand, but we are going to continue to see a huge supply enter the market over the next 20 to 30 years. The other item that I would add to that, when we look at housing supply right now, is the fact that we currently have a huge portion of the country that is now seeing homes that they did not previously see. With the introduction of remote work, we are going to continue to see development in more remote areas that previously we didn't have that same amount of development. That opens up a huge swath of the country to additional supply. And you can see right now that the housing supply is at record low. However, I anticipate that that supply is going to normalize back into what we've seen over the past 6 years, which is pretty normal. Again, you can see that over time that we do have spikes. However, we're going to have the demand is going to be over the entirety of the United States as opposed to more of the urban areas. So if we go back to our trusty CPI chart, then what we're actually looking at is, once again, two of the key items here I believe are actually going to go down in cost over time, in shelter and fuels. Now let's continue on into food and clothing. So these are two of the more material side. Right now, those prices are going up. So if we look at actually commodities pricings, then these are items that are going to continue to go up. So if we look at all commodities, you can see that this is something that is going up. However, over the past few years, this has declined. So commodities have actually been decreasing as technology continues to push itself better and better, as well as we continue to have more supply with less input. So we're looking right now at continued increasing of technology and continued decreasing of that input, combined with the fact that overall the United States population is going to continue to evolve and to change. So right now we are continuing to see less and less expensive goods enter the market, despite the fact that our incomes aren't necessarily changing dramatically. All of this being said, I am still a firm believer that inflation is here and it is present, but I think that everything that we're talking about here is showcasing that we are seeing some rapid price changes, but it's going to be interesting to see if this stays with us long term, because if we go back to what makes this up, food and clothing are going to continue to decline over time as long as it's available, as long as those shipping channels are available. And then the shelter, I believe, is going to become more available, and fuels, I think, is going to be getting better and better, because if we don't just look at oil, there is still an entire renewables market outstanding that may have a pertinent effect on the overall supply of fuels in the United States. So all of this is mostly just my rambling at this point in time. I'm by no means a financial advisor, just some guy on YouTube. But I think it's important to note that as someone who's been pounding the table talking about inflation the past year, it's important to look at the other side of the argument and see what could cause prices to go down and the dollar continue to stay strong. So if you have any questions, feel free to join the Discord, which is in the link in the description down below, and ask me, or check out some comments down below. But if you find this content helpful, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks. Talk to you later.